Why there? Why did your body, your upright posture, and the long story of our species all begin on one particular continent rather than on any of the others? Imagine Earth as a house with 6 rooms, each with its own conditions: hot and humid, cold and dry, harsh, or peaceful and gentle. And here's the part that puzzled scientists for decades. The room that created you was not the most comfortable room, nor was it the safest. It was the harshest room in the entire house. That room was Africa, and it was there that you were made, while no other room could do the same. For decades, this fact baffled the scientific world. But to fully answer the question, why there? You first need to know one remarkable truth. Your most ancient ancestors were not born in Africa. You are a primate. Forward-facing eyes, grasping hands, a large brain. Those traits appeared around 66 million years ago in small creatures that lived in the trees. But the higher primates, the group called anthropoids, the common ancestors of monkeys, apes, and humans, did not take shape until about 40 million years ago. And here's the surprise. The oldest anthropoid fossil is not found in Africa. It is found in China. The paleontologist Christopher Beard named it Eosimias, the dawn monkey, a creature that weighed less than 200 grams, small enough to sit in the palm of your hand. The lineage of monkeys, apes, and humans most likely began in Asia. So how did your ancestors get to Africa? Because back then, the 2 continents were not joined. They were separated by an ocean called the Tethys Sea. And this is the first gift. A stroke of luck almost too strange to believe. No animal swam across an entire ocean. Around 38 million years ago, the tectonic plates drifted closer together. The Tethys narrowed, and scattered islands rose out of it. Then came a storm, a flood, and a large mat of vegetation torn loose and swept out to sea, carrying a few tiny anthropoids clinging to it. Most of them died, but it only took one small group reaching the far shore. They washed up in Africa. We know this happened because the oldest anthropoid fossils on the continent, found in the Fayum region of Egypt, show they were already thriving there very early on. Now think about what would have happened if that crossing had failed, because a few million years later, the Earth's climate plunged. At the end of a period called the Miocene, wave after wave of harsh cold wiped out nearly every ape in Europe and Asia. The forests died. The apes died with them. Dryopithecus, a European ape the size of a chimpanzee, vanished completely. Only Africa and a strip of Southeast Asia held onto their forests and their warmth. In that moment, Africa became a lifeboat. It preserved the bloodline that would lead to chimpanzees, to gorillas, and to you. If that little group of anthropoids had never drifted to Africa, they would have frozen to death alongside the doomed apes of Asia, and you would not exist. But survival alone was not enough to turn an ape into a human. What did that? This is the second gift. A brutal test that forced us to change. To see its power, look at an ape that never had to face it. The orangutan. Orangutans split from the African apes and retreated into the rainforests of Southeast Asia. That forest barely changed for millions of years. No upheaval, no pressure, no reason to change. So today the orangutan still lives its whole life in the trees, just like its ancestors did 10 million years ago. A stable world keeps the old answer. Remember the orangutan. It is the picture of what did not happen to you, because in Africa the environment did the opposite. The climate dried out, and the unbroken forests began to break apart. Dense forest gave way to open woodland dotted with grassland. The landscape was no longer a green carpet. It was islands of trees separated by stretches of bare ground. To eat, your ancestors had to leave the trees and cross the open ground to reach the next patch. And they did something no ape had done as a habit. They stood up straight and walked on 2 legs. Why 2 legs? Scientists still argue about it, and I will let you decide. Some say walking upright saves energy over long distances. Some say it helped reach fruit up high. Some say it freed the hands to carry food and carry young. Which one do you lean toward? Whatever the reason, the evidence of upright walking always shows up in Africa, and shockingly early. In Chad, the species Sahelanthropus, about 7 million years old, has the opening at the base of its skull set toward the front, the mark of a head balanced on a vertical spine. In 2022, a study published in the journal Nature analyzed its thigh bone and concluded that this species walked on 2 legs regularly. Then, in Ethiopia, the species we call Ardi, 4.4 million years old, lived in open woodland, its knees angled inward but its big toe still splayed out to grip branches. Then Lucy, with a spine almost built to walk upright. And the finest evidence of all lies at Laetoli in Tanzania. About 3.66 million years ago, a group walked across a layer of damp volcanic ash. The ash hardened, preserving nearly 70 footprints across 27 meters. Look closely at those prints, and you will see the track of a small individual walking right beside a larger one. A child beside its parent, a family, frozen in ash, standing for 3.66 million years. Standing upright freed the hands, and the hands began to hold stone. The oldest member of the genus Homo, your own genus, is Homo habilis, more than 2 million years old, with crude stone tools called oldowin, sharp enough to crack bone from marrow. But tools were not the answer yet. What made us human was a brain that was both large and endlessly adaptable. So what forced that brain to grow? Africa again, but this time in a way crueler than any drought. The scientist Rick Potts of the Smithsonian read the sediment layers in the Olorgesailie Basin in Kenya, spanning the entire era of the genus Homo. In the rock, he found a dizzying story. A large lake appears, then it vanishes, then a volcano erupts, then the lake returns, then a drought, then the lake fills again. In the same place, the environment flipped back and forth over and over. From this, Potts proposed an idea called variability selection. When an environment swings that wildly, anything that is good at only one way of living dies every time the landscape shifts. What survives is whatever can adapt. A brain that can learn, that can change its strategy. That is why the genus Homo, and Homo erectus in particular, developed an unusually large brain and became the first Homo bold enough to walk out of Africa, reaching as far as Georgia and the island of Java 1.88 million years ago. But the oldest erectus fossils still sit beside Lake Turkana in Kenya. However far they traveled, the forge that made them was still Africa. Finally, your own species appears. Homo sapiens. How do we know you were born here? This is the third gift, the secret hidden deep in your blood. First, the bones. The oldest Homo sapiens fossils are skull fragments from Jebel Irhoud in Morocco, about 300,000 years old, according to a study in 2017. In Ethiopia, the Omo I fossil, redated through a layer of volcanic ash in 2022, turned out to be 233,000 years old, but the strongest evidence is in the genes. Africans today carry the greatest genetic diversity on the planet. Genetic diversity only builds up over time, which means our species has lived and evolved in Africa longer than anywhere else. Every population outside Africa carries only a small slice of that gene pool, the slice a small group took with them when they left the continent around 50,000 years ago. And the true power of Africa was not just keeping you alive, it was its sheer size. The continent was so vast that groups of early humans split apart, each adapting to its own region and climate. Then they met again. One group knew one trick, another group knew another, and their children inherited both. Over hundreds of thousands of years of this, the store of knowledge and the store of genes kept thickening, producing a species more flexible than any single group could ever be. We know this is real because it left a trace. At sites across eastern and southern Africa, archaeologists found beads made from ostrich eggshell. And between 50,000 and 33,000 years ago, beads from two regions more than 3,000 kilometers apart looked almost identical. That is the mark of a trading network stretching farther than many modern countries. In 2023, a genetic study based on the Nama people of southern Africa nailed the conclusion. Homo sapiens did not arise from a single ancestral tribe, but from many African populations that split apart and blended back together over hundreds of thousands of years. That diversity is the shield of our kind. It is why, when your ancestors finally stepped out into the world, they were flexible enough to survive everywhere they went. So ask the first question again. Why did the story of humankind begin on a single continent? Perhaps because it never began in a single room. Africa is not the room where you were born. It is the whole house, the place where the climate happened to shelter your ancestors, the place where hardship forged your upright stance and your brain, and the place where the doors between rooms never closed so that your ancestors kept meeting, kept mixing, and kept rising. You do not exist because Africa was the easiest place to live. You exist because it was the most unpredictable.